Let's forget manual JSON files and let's create some DataGen. 121 Minecraft modding courses available down below, with over 11 hours of content covering everything from the basics all the way to block entities and custom mobs. Alright, we find ourselves back in Taylor once more, and in this tutorial we'll be adding a custom DataGen, or rather just data generation, to our project over here. As a high-level overview, what is DataGen? Well, DataGen basically means that all of the different JSON files that we've written right here, so the block states JSON files, the block model JSON files, the item model JSON files, all of those are now history, right? There's so much history, I will delete them. Now, please note, don't delete yours just now, because if you get, anything wrong or anything like that, I highly recommend you actually take your entire resources folder, you back that up, and then you may or may not delete them after everything is done. But let's just, for the sake of argument, I'm going to delete the block states and the models folder right here. Bam, completely gone. It's over. The JSON file, the in_us JSON file, we will actually keep that because I don't see personally a benefit of doing DataGen for the translation. If you want to do that, then you can basically do that as well. But that is, in my opinion, just not needed. Similarly, in the data folder, well, yeah, we can in theory get rid of the entire data folder. There's one reason why we're not going to, but I will just get rid of Minecraft, just get rid of that stuff. The NeoForge stuff, just get rid of that. We'll be able to data gen that too. And then in the tutorial mode over here, I'll get rid of the loot tables and the recipes. The only thing I will keep is our tag right here. That is for one specific reason, and I will show that when we get to that. But now, how does DataGen work? Well, as you can see by the length of this video, it is an involved process. The reason why it's so complicated, let's say, because we have to do it first time. The setup, doing it first time, is going to take quite a while. But once you have this done, then you're basically going to be good to go, and you can then reuse this as well anytime that you might want to make a new project. So in our tutorial mod package, we're going to right-click new package called DataGen. Inside of there, we'll need several new classes. The first one is the DataGenerators Class, and then we'll just go down the list. We're going to have the ModBlockLootTableProvider. There we go. That's the first one. Then we have the ModBlockStateProvider. There we go. We're then going to create the ModBlockTagProvider. There we go. This is for block tags, obviously. Then we're going to have another new one. That's going to be the ModItemModelProvider. And we almost have it. The second to last class is the ModItemTagProvider. There we go. And the last class over here is going to be the ModRecipeProvider. There we go. Now, most of the names over here of the classes should basically point to what they do. And what we will do is we will start at the top, but not for the data generators, but we're actually going to implement each of the different classes first, and then going back to the data generators in the end over here. So the ModBlockLootTableProvider will extend the BlockLootSubProvider class over here. As you can see, tap to auto-complete it. You can then hover over this and implement the generate method. We hover over this again, create constructor matching super, where it is quite important that we choose, where it actually doesn't matter which one we choose, because we have to change the constructor anyway, because in the constructor, we basically are going to delete the first two parameters, and we're going to end up with a holder lookup.provider over here called registries. And the first parameter is going to be set.of, and then the second parameter is going to be feature flags dot registry dot all flags. There we go. As always, of course, all of the code is available down below. This is probably in this instance more important than ever, right? So that you basically have access to, well, everything and all of the code. Now, loot tables. What kind of loot tables do we have? Well, obviously, we're going to have loot tables for all of our blocks. And this is the first thing, because what we want to do is we want to override the getKnownBlocks method right here. And this is going to look a little bit confusing, but overall, I'm going to explain once I type this out. So we're going to have in this method, we're going to return ModBlocks.blocks. So this is the deferred register, getEntries.stream.map, and then we're going to map holder : value, and then : iterator. As a highest level overview, we're basically getting the list of all of the blocks that we have just registered, right? So we're going to register all of those blocks with this registry, right? With this deferred register. This is going to be our bismuth block, our bismuth ore, the deep slate ore, as well as the magic block, right? So all of those are now registered in our deferred register. And now we're getting that as a list, and we're just sort of transforming it, right? This basically just means that we're transforming it in a way that the loot table provider, right, can actually use this, right? Because it wants an iteratable over here, so it wants an iterator, so we can actually go through all of the blocks. That's literally what we're doing here. So we're basically, as a high-level overview, giving it all of the blocks that we have registered. One consequence of this is that every one of our blocks actually needs a loot table actually generated over here in the generate method. If you do not have a loot table for a specific block, then I will actually crash not the game, but the DataGen. So when we're running DataGen in just a second, right, or in a couple of minutes, let's say, then what's going to happen is that we actually need that to be the case. For blocks to just drop themselves, it is as easy as calling the drop self method over here and then just saying modblocks.bismuthblock.get, and that's it. Now the bismuth block is going to drop itself. Now, one thing we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing for modblocks.magicblock.get. However, I will basically comment this out specifically so that I can show you the error that occurs if you do not have everything set up, basically. And now one of the questions is, well, wait a second, our bismuth ore and our deep slate ore, they had some, interesting ways of dropping. That is very true. Now, when it comes to the bismuth ore, very straightforward. We want to call the add method, passing in the block that we destroy, and then that's supposed to drop. So bismuth, not bismuth block, but bismuth ore.get. And then the second parameter here, as you can see, is a function from block to builder, and that builder is going to call the create ore drop method, passing in the ore that can drop, right? So modblocks bismuth ore.get, and then the item that is supposed to drop, modItems raw bismuth.get. There you go. And that's going to create a normal ore like loot table, right? That has, raw bismuth, one raw bismuth basically drop, and then the bismuth ore when you mine it with silk touch, let's say. And what we can do is we can control left click on this and actually see the different methods over here. And let's say, for example, we can also find the copper ore drops right here. Now, one of the things here is that obviously when we had this before, we had the deep slate ore, right, drop more, right? So that one actually dropped similar to, let's say, copper. Now, the issue is we can't use the copper one because raw copper here is just hard-coded, meaning that we can't really change that. However, for that, I have actually made a custom helper method. This is literally, so I'm going to copy over the custom helper method, once again, available to you down below. But what you will find is that you will actually show this. So I'm just going to copy this over. You can see this is the create multiple ore drops method with an item over here where you specify what item is going to drop, and then also how many minimum drops you're going to have and how many maximum drops you will have. And you will find that this over here, right, the method here is incredibly similar to the contents right here because, well, it literally is just those contents just changed up a little bit, right? So this is once again where Java knowledge is incredibly useful, right? So you can take methods that would usually, well, that already exist over here, and you can transform them a little bit, change them up a little bit so to suit your needs a little bit better. So in this case, what we can then do is we can simply call the add method again, modblocks.bismuthdeepslateore.get, and then once again a function here from block to builder. And then here we're going to call the create multiple ore drops method. Once again, modblocks bismuthdeepslateore.get, then modItems raw bismuth.get, and then let's say the minimum drops is 2 and the maximum is 5, and that is going to work. And yes, of course, right, if we want to do this again, like let's say we had like an end ore and a nether ore, then yes, we can literally just reuse that create multiple ore drops method how often as we want, and we can even put it in, different items, different blocks. So that is why this is so friggin' cool and good. And that's actually all of our blocks done. So this particular class is done, and let's actually, the way that we're going to do this is we're going to make one of the classes, then we're going to jump back to the data generators, set that up, and then we'll see. So for the data generators, what we want is above the class, we wanted to say at event bus subscriber, just tap to autocomplete it. We want to say modID is equal to tutorialmod.modID, and then bus is equal to the mod bus right here. So event bus subscriber.bus.mod. And then let's see, we want to override actually add a method, public static void gather data. That has a specific parameter that is the gather data event right here. I want to call this event, and extremely important above the class. First of all, making sure we write this correctly, gather data, there you go. And then above the method, we wanted to say add subscribe event. Extremely important that we have all of these things done correctly, right? The annotation above the class, we want the add subscribe event annotation above the method that is public, static, and void, and has the gather data event as a parameter. Extremely important. Here we want some helper variables. That's going to be the data generator from this one over here, data generator from Minecraft data generator right here, called the generator equal to event.getGenerator, crazily enough. Then we're going to have a pack output. That is going to be the pack output equal to the generator.getPackOutput, and then an existing file helper, which is going to be the existing file helper equal to the event.getExistingFileHelper. And lastly, a completable future of type holder lookup.provider called the lookup provider equal to event.getLookupProvider. And there we go. Highest level overview. These are some classes or structures that are just going to, well, allow us to actually generate our custom data. That's, in my opinion, right, that's as much as you really need to know. If you want to know anything else, then you can always go into the classes, take a look at what they do, and figure it out from there. But overall, those just help us with actually being able to generate the data that we need. And then for the first one, that's going to be the loot tables. So we're going to call generator.addProvider, then make event, then use event.includeServer, because in this case, the loot table provider that is going to have, well, everything including the server, right? So this needs to be on the server. And then we're going to make a new loot table provider, passing in pack output, then passing in collections.empty set. But we want to use this one right here. There we go. Empty set. After that, a new parameter, which is going to be a list.of. It's going to look a little bit crazy over here, but that's the only one that's going to look this crazy. Then a list.of, a new, and this is going to be our loot table provider sub provider entry. Here, passing in mod, you can actually see it suggests this to us, ModBlockLootTableProvider : new. Second parameter is going to be the loot context param sets.block. And then after the second closing parentheses, passing in the lookup provider. Once again, ending it with a semicolon. And then once again, all of the code is available down below, so no worries at all. You can basically double check it there, because this one specifically is pretty crazy. All of the rest are going to look much like easier to understand and easier to basically add, but that's going to be that. All right, now that we've done this, let's actually go to the tab right over here, and on the data, we can simply run this, and let's actually see. Now, we will find that, well, we would expect all of the loot tables to generate. However, we're actually going to get an error. This is deliberate. Once again, we've made this deliberate because look at this, missing loot table for magic block. So one thing I want you to also take away from this is just because you see red over here, don't just freak out, right? Because I know a lot of people are like, oh, that's an error. Let's just, burn the PC, throw it out of the window. We're done. We're never modding again. No. This is what programming is about, where you're always going to run into errors. That's totally fine. Just read it. You're like, I don't know how to read this. Look at this. Missing loot table, magic block for magic block. Literally all that it is. And that means that, like I said, because we've defined all of the blocks right here, being like, hey, this is our known blocks, all of those have to have a loot table. So there's two ways that we can solve this. Either we're going to also make a loot table for the magic block, or if you're like, well, the magic block shouldn't drop anything. That's fine. That could be the case that you have a block that actually is not supposed to drop anything. Then you go into your ModBlocks class, and let's say instead of the requires correct tool for drops method, you then call the no loot table method, which will then also make sure that it's not going to need a loot table. So if we were then run it again, what you'll find is that all of a sudden, because I have the no loot table method called, you can see no errors are going to appear right here. Instead, what's going to appear is, you can see a process finish with X equals 0. 0 means we're A-OK, that is totally fine. And you can also find, regardless of whatever it says, if you see all providers took how many milliseconds it took, and it wrote like new things, right? Caching total files, so we have new files written, then you're good, right? That means you're good. And we can see now under sources generated, we can actually see data over here, loot tables, and we can see the 3 loot tables that we have defined. Absolutely freaking fantastic. And we can go into them. We can see they're literally the exact same loot tables that we had before. Absolutely freaking amazing, right? So this is going to be really cool. And with this done, well, now we can actually proceed to implement all of the rest. And with all of the rest, let's start with the ModBlockStateProvider over here. Let's just see what we can do. We're going to do the block state and the item model provider at the same time, because they are basically related to each other. But let's first of all block state provider. So this is going to extend the block state provider over here from NeoForge. There we go. hover over this, implement the register states and models method, hover over this again, create constructor matching super, where we'll delete the mod ID because, well, we know what our mod ID is, tutorialmod.modID. That is our mod ID. There we go. And now in the register states and models method, that is where we can add some models. Now in our example, all of our blocks are simple blocks. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a helper method. This is because, well, they're all going to be the same thing basically. So we're going to have a private void block with item method, and that is going to have a deferred block over here, deferred block of type question mark. I'm going to call this the deferred block, and we're going to call the simple block with item over here. You can see this requires a model file, and that is why we basically do this. We say deferred block.get, and then here we're going to call the cube all method, passing in the deferred block.get as well. Why this is not already accessible, right? I've previously talked about specifically in Forge that the DataGen is sometimes a little bit lacking in certain helper methods. Going forward, we will actually be creating a lot of different custom helper methods in this particular class, but not to worry. I'm sure that at some point there's going to be some additional helper methods basically added too. But for the time being, that's going to be our helper method over here. Like I said, all available in the description. Then we're going to have block with item over here, passing in ModBlocksBlock, and then we can actually duplicate this. I think 3 more times is fine because we're going to have the OR, we're going to have the deep slate OR, and we're going to have the magic block. I believe that those are all of the blocks that we have over here. That is indeed correct, and that's literally it. This is going to generate us the block state JSON file. It's going to generate us the block model JSON file, and it's going to generate us the item model JSON file, all with this singular line. I'll be, you know, with an actual, even though there is also a helper method over here, but once again, it's just one line, and every time we add a new block, instead of making a custom block state JSON file and then block model JSON and all that craziness, duplicate it, put in the different block, done. That's it. The next thing, which is closely related, is obviously the item models, and that's going to look kind of like this. In the ModItemModelProvider, we're going to extend from the item model provider right here. There you go. Hover over this again. Implement the register models method, hover over this again, create constructor matching super, where we once again just delete the mod ID because, well, that one we know, tutorialmod.modID. And then what we can do is, well, very easily just register our models. And that one is even easier because here we can call the basic item method where we simply pass in the item modItems.bismuth.get, and there we go. And now here, literally just duplicate them for all of the other items. So we're going to have raw bismuth, for example. We're going to have the radish. We're going to have the starlight ashes. We're going to have the frostfire ice and also the chisel right here. And I believe those should be all of them. This is indeed correct. Those are all of our items. And if not, then we'll see this in a second inside of the game anyway. But yeah, there you go. That's the block states provider and the item model provider. Obviously, item model provider over here specifically for items, right? So for items and their item models, and then the block state provider is usually for everything, although we will see in future tutorials some blocks where we will use both the block states provider as well as the item model provider, because sometimes there's some, you know, mismatch basically that we need to take care of. Like I said, sadly, we don't get access to all of the methods that vanilla has in terms of generating, but that's going to be okay. The item and block state provider both go at the bottom over here. So that's going to be generator.addProvider. Here, we're going to say include client, because here we want to include the client only. This is going to be ModItemModelProvider, passing in the pack output, passing in the existing file helper. And that's the first line. And the second line is going to be event.include client again. There's going to be the new ModBlockStateProvider, once again, passing in the pack output as well as the existing file helper. And there we go. Once again, the code is available down below. I'll say this a couple more times just so that you definitely know that you can also take a look at the code down below. And with this, well, let's just run the data again. What the frick, right? I mean, you know, let's just see. And what we'll find is, once again, it's going to generate us all of the JSON files that before we had to do manually, which of course is kind of a headache. You can see 18 of them written in the assets folder now, block states, and we got the models over here, and we have everything we freaking need, right? The item model JSON files for blocks, you can see they look exactly like we did them, right? The bismuth over here, there you go. It's exactly the same JSON file, just generating automatically. And this is going to be so incredibly useful, especially if you have, you know, 100 different items. It's like at some point it gets a little bit tedious. And if you can just literally just do Control D to duplicate it, you know, change the name over here and be done, absolutely freaking fantastic, man. Let's set up the ModTagProvider. This will extend the block tags provider. In this case, hovering over this, implementing the add tags method. Hover over this again, create constructor matching super. And here, what we want to do is once again, get rid of the mod ID right here and just change it to tutorial.modID. And we actually have some tags to add, and those are going to be the, well, we call the tag method and then say block tags dot, and this is going to be the mineable with pickaxe over here. We can then call the add method as often as we need, modblocks.bismuthblock.get, and then just call this a couple more times over here for the ore block, then for the deep state ore block, and for the magic block, let's say. And then we can also do the same thing with block tags dot, and this is going to be the iron tool, so needs iron tool, and then for example say modblocks.deepslateOre.get, that needs a iron tool, and there you go. And let's say for just for the sake of argument over here, you can also say diamond tool, and let's say the magic block needs the diamond tool, even though that literally doesn't make any sense actually, because, well, the diamond block is not going to drop anything anyway, or rather the magic block is not going to drop anything. So let's just keep it like this. That's going to be fine. And this one is just a little bit different too, because this one actually, what we want is the block tags provider as a variable over here, equal to a new ModBlockTagProvider, passing in the pack output, passing in the lookup provider, passing in the existing file helper. And then we can call the generator.addProvider with event.includeServer in this case, and then just passing in this variable. We need this again for the ModItemModelProvider, which we're going to do as well. So let's just take a look at this. This is the model provider. I actually meant the tag provider. We need this for the item tag provider, which is another thing that's quite interesting. So this one, what we'll do is we'll extend from the item tags provider over here, hover over this, and it's going to be the add tags method again, hover over again, create constructor matching super. Here, we want to actually take a look over here. If I recall correctly, we need to choose this one right here. Let me just double check, because I think this is actually a little bit important. Let's choose this one. That is correct. Otherwise, once again, you can also just check the description below the GitHub repository. Once again, getting rid of the mod ID over here, tutorial.mod.modID, and that should be totally fine. That looks all correct. That's going to be very good. In the add tags, well, here we're going to actually add for our mod tags, right? Mod tags.items.transformable items. And here we still have this particular tag. And the reason why I have this is because of the one thing that we're going to take a look at in just a second. There's going to be the bismuth over here, bismuth.get though. There you go. And we can add the rest here too. So there's going to be raw bismuth, right? And then the rest here are vanilla items. So now we do items.coal, and that's going to be the stick right here, and then the compass right here. Comparator, nope, I want the compass. There you go. And then ending it with a semicolon. And then we can add this to the DataGenerators class as well, easily enough. So that is literally just going to be generator.addProvider, event.includeServer. Once again, it's going to be a new ModItemTagProvider. Parameters is going to need pack output. Then we want the lookup provider. Then we want the ModBlockTagProvider.ContentsGetter, and then the existing file helper. And that is the reason why we needed the ModBlockTagProvider over here as a variable, so that we can actually add it to our item tags as well. And if we will run DataGen now, what we'll find is we will actually once again get a deliberate error. Now, why might this be the case? Well, wait a second. Well, would you look at that? There's no error over here because, sometimes you could be a doofus over here. Well, actually, what I wanted to show was a very important thing. For the sake of argument, just get our block states folder over here back again. We're going to delete it from here. So now we have already existing JSON files that we're about to generate, right? Disregard everything I said. It's going to be totally fine. Apparently, maybe in NeoForge, they actually changed it, and you can actually have duplicate JSON files over here, both in your generated folder as well as in your custom ones. That was not the case for a long while, but there you go. That's fine. Let's just brush over this and continue along over here, mainly with the recipes, because that one is somewhat of a doozy, but let's just see. This will extend the recipe provider over here, and we'll then implement the iCondition builder. We're going to hover over this and create the matching super, create constructor matching super, which is going to be totally fine. We also want to override the build recipes method right here. And then let's take a look. So this is going to be quite interesting. So I'm going to show you a shaped recipe. I'm going to show you a shapeless recipe. I'm going to show you a second shapeless recipe and some ore and ore smelting and ore blasting, for which we'll sadly need some custom methods, again, some custom helper methods, but we'll see. First of all, the shaped stuff. So shaped recipe builder.shaped, passing in the recipe category, let's say miscellaneous, modblocks.bismuthblock.get. So this is the recipe for the bismuth block. We're then going to call the pattern 3 times, not 4 times, but 3 times, passing in different strings over here. And once again, what we'll see is, well, that looks eerily similar to what we've seen in the custom recipes tutorial. And this is exactly right, because the symbol B here is going to be defined as moditems.bismuth.get over here, or as item. I mean, that's fine, but actually .get. There we go. And then this is unlocked by. Extremely important that we have this for has_bismuth. And then here it's going to be the has method passing in moditems.bismuth. And then at the end right here, .save, passing in the recipe output. Otherwise, it's not going to be written. And you can see this basically is a shaped recipe, right? A shaped recipe with, if you put all bismuth inside of the inventory, or, you know, in the crafting grid of the crafting table, then we'll get a bismuth block out of it. Shapeless is even easier. And we call the shapeless recipe builder.shapeless, passing in recipe category.miscellaneous again. Let's say here we want bismuth moditems.bismuth.get and 9 of those. And this will requires the modblocks.bismuth block, and then literally unlocked by has, this is a string again, has_bismuth_block, and then calling the has method again with the bismuth block right here, calling the save method, passing in the recipe output, and bam, we got the shapeless recipe. Now, one thing that might happen is you might have a different method, right? And that different method, let's say, is also going to get you a bismuth, right? Whether or not be 9 or 18 or whatever, how many, right? But it's also going to give you bismuth. Let's say this is going to be the magic block, right? So we're going to have the magic block over here. It has magic block, there you go, and has magic block, right? So we put a magic block inside of the crafting table, and we will get a bismuth out of it. The issue is that the recipes default to the name of the recipe result, meaning both this recipe will be called bismuth.json, and this one will also be called bismuth.json, which obviously doesn't work. You can actually define your own custom name inside of the save method right here. As a second parameter, you simply pass in an ID. Usually you want tutorial mod : and then whatever name it is. In this case, we're going to do bismuth_2. For the sake of argument, you can also make bismuth from magic block. Let's say, there you go. And that's going to be it. That's going to be fine. And now it's going to be saved under a different name. So if you have, you know, the same output, right, the same result, but a different recipe, then just change the name literally like this. Easy enough. And now when it comes to smelting and blasting, right, we of course have raw bismuth, and we have the ore and the deep slate ore that we could be all smelting and or blasting. It would be really nice if there was a, oh, look at this, ore blasting, ore smelting, ore cooking. That's amazing. It is amazing. However, let's actually double check over here, because one of the big issues is that the ore cooking over here deposits the JSON file inside of the Minecraft folder. We can actually take a look at this. So what we'll see is that this requires quite a few things, including a list over here of item like. We'll actually create that because we will need this one way or the other. So this is going to be a list of item like, exactly like this. Import the list class over here, Java util, absolutely. And that's going to be the bismuth_smeltables equal to a list.of. And the smeltables are moditems.rawbismuth.get, or as item, that's fine. Actually, we can literally just even remove the get modblocks.the bismuth ore, as well as the deep slate ore. No, the deep slate ore, there you go. So those are going to be the different recipes that we want. So now what we can do is we can call the ore smelting, and what we find is that we can do recipe output, passing in the bismuth smeltables, passing in the recipe category miscellaneous. The result is going to be bismuth, obviously, right? There you go. Experience, and then a cooking time, and the group is bismuth. There you go. And now that we have this, we can call the same thing for the ore blasting. There we go. And what you'll find is that that's pretty cool. The cooking time here changes to 100, obviously. We then go to data generators and just do generators.addProvider, event.includeServer for the new ModRecipeProvider, passing in the pack output, passing in the lookup provider, and that is it. And if we now run the data over here, obviously that is going to, first of all, generate us the three different recipes that we've already created. That's pretty cool. And we'll find this. That's pretty awesome. So we'll see under the, not the loot tables, but recipe over here, you can see bismuth, bismuth block, and bismuth from a magic block. But you'll say, well, wait a second, where are all my ore and ore smelting? That's all under Minecraft. Because sadly, the methods right here are hard coding it so that it is in Minecraft. Now this, once again, what I have is I have already created 3 helper methods for this, all down below as well. You will find that we basically have a custom ore cooking method, a custom ore blasting method, and a custom ore smelting method. And those ones, what you'll find is that it literally just has this particular thing over here. Just adding the mod ID right here. That's all you need. And with that done, literally we can run the data again. It's going to disappear those from Minecraft over here and actually put them under our own namespace, which is basically always what you want. And you'll find, there we go. Now all of them are under our own recipe over here. The recipe folder here is empty. It will also generate the advancements for all of the recipes. This is just to unlock the recipes properly. So no worries there at all. That just automatically generates, but that is not to worry basically. But yeah, there you go. That is the custom data gen. I mean, like I said, the first setup, extremely crazy. It's going to take a while, but then you have things like, right? You have this list over here, and now let's say you had like 3 different types of ores, right? Make another list for, you know, whatever other types you have. You know, you have tin, you have copper already exists, tin, lithium, whatever, right? And then you might be like, okay, now I have like my list of smeltables. Literally call 1 line over here, or 2 lines, right? For the smelting and the blasting, bam, it's going to generate all of those different recipes for you. Super simple, super easy, and, you know, easily expandable basically. I'll also link the NeoForge documentation on all of the DataGen stuff as well, just so that you have this again. But let's just go into the game and see if I missed anything. It's not impossible, but I'm pretty sure everything should still be there. So let's take a look. Oh, and a short little addendum over here for the data maps, right? So this was the fuels, let's say, for example. So in tutorial mod DataGen, we wanted to create the ModDataMapProvider over here in this case, which will extend the DataMapProvider. And then hover over this, implement the gather method, hover over this again, and create constructor matching super. And this is super easy. We can basically just say this.builder and then passing in the NeoForge data maps dot. You can see these are all the maps that are currently available. In our case, we want to add to the furnace fuels over here, and we want to add, then call the .add method, modItems.starlightashes.getID, new furnace fuel. Here, how much burn time it is. We want to replace false, and there we go. And then we can do the same thing, right? When we do this for the Frostfire Ice here, I genuinely don't remember the burn time anymore, but let's just say it's the double of it, whatever it might be. That's literally it. And then to use this, we want to go to the DataGenerators class and then just add a generator.addProvider, event.includeServer. So let's actually situate this just a little bit differently. There you go. And then this is going to be the new ModDataMapProvider, passing in the pack output and the lookup provider. And there we go. If we then were to DataGen this, what we'll find is that, well, what we'll have is in our data folder, a new folder will appear, which is called NeoForge. And it's right here. There you go. And now it has the data map in there as well. And that's how easy it also is to add the data maps over here. I did kind of forget that, but there you go. Add it here in post. So no worries at all. All right, so we can see this is actually a pretty good sign. Everything still has a texture. Let's see. Everything still has a texture. And I mean, that's already a very, very good sign. Let's see if I were to, let's say, take this and put it in here. There we go. This one also works. I feel like this is already pretty much everything we need to see in order to know, yeah, everything still works. So you might say, well, wait a second, nothing has happened. Oh, so many things have happened. And you'll see why DataGen is so incredibly useful. Literally in the next tutorial. I'm just saying. Because in the next tutorial right here, that's when we'll add all of the non-block blocks, meaning stairs, slabs, all of that stuff. And you'll see why, yeah, DataGen is basically a must for that. So, hope to see you there. So, yeah.